is done. So, okay, we are doing that now. So we are recording the webinar, and you will get the recording once when it is ready, so around 1 week time. Along with that, we will have the Q&A part of the webinar, so you can write down a question or two for Wolter, and that will be for the end of the webinar. Also, we will have 2 polls that are reserved in between the webinar, so get ready to press the button or also to engage. Chat box is open, as we mentioned. Monica is monitoring that one. Also have an eye on it, because we will share some useful links during the webinar also in the chat box. Okay. Let us see what are those ingredients, what Wolter prepared for us to streamline the billing in the B2B companies. Wolter, the kitchen or the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ervoye. I hope you all can hear me okay. During this webinar, we will cover some basic stuff around billing, but please bear with us as we aim to make it relevant throughout the webinar. We talk about what billing is and how we define it in a recurring business and what types of billing we come across. Then I'm kind of already spoiling the 3 ingredients right here in the agenda. So a spoiler alert, but we go through them in more detail. Firstly, a lot of the work displayed on an invoice comes from like previous stages in the process. So we'll talk about how we can use that to our advantage in our first ingredient, which is reusing. Then we talk about what kind of integrations can be done to further automate billing in the second ingredient. And we move on to the final ingredient, which is subscription-based billing, and how we utilize a subscription hub to trigger billing. And as we always do during our webinars, we will also share a practical story of one of our customers and the steps they took to fully automate billing. So it's always good to learn from the practice as well. And as Ervoye also mentioned, please, let Monica know your questions. She will raise them with us at the end of the webinar, so we go through them. So billing, what does it mean? Billing often has kind of a nasty ring to it. It may sometimes also feel weird when you just signed a customer and you're kind of still celebrating the signature to also have to send them that invoice. But is it really that much of an issue? Think of it, if you go to a restaurant, you just ate a nice, good meal, and you as a customer are the one that asks for the bill, right? So even though you kind of already had the thing you came in for, you still ask for it. So it's just a natural part to be paid for services you provide. So that stigma of sending an invoice being bad should just go away. I did some Google activities around, what is billing? Wikipedia calls it the process of sending an invoice or a bill to customers for goods or services. But I rephrased that a little to requesting the payment for the agreed amount of the service or goods provided. We will briefly talk about the most common types of billing in a recurring revenue business. I think most are familiar with all of these, but let's list them out quickly. The invoice is in essence a summary document which covers the parties it concerns, the agreements made in earlier stages of the relationship, and asks for the payment, or can also summarize the payment made already. You have direct debit, many options on that. It means you upfront provide the supplier with kind of your bank credentials and sign an agreement that allows the supplier to withdraw a certain amount, an agreed amount of money for the service on a fixed point in time from your bank account. Then you have credit card, which is kind of the same principle, but on a credit level. That means you first have the money drawn from the credit card and later from the actual bank account. I'm assuming there's not much news here, but it's good to list out, which we will be covering during this webinar. The restaurant bill will leave out. So even if you go out to dinner for once a week, it doesn't mean recurring revenue for the restaurant. I'm kind of assuming that most of the attendees actually use invoices for more than half-ish of their incoming business, but we have a nice way to find that out by our first poll. Mr. Ervoye.
Okay, so let's launch the first poll. And here we go with a very simple question. So how are you doing your billing today? We have mainly invoice, mainly direct debit, credit card, or you do the healthy mix of both, all three, of course. So let's give it a few more seconds so that people can answer. It will be kind of interesting to see these results, Wolter, and that we also look at them a bit more. That we see on the how can the invoicing from the restaurant go? What you mentioned there. Okay. 18. End of the poll. Share the results. So mainly invoice is the one of the most common. We have also healthy mix. Can you give us a bit of a comment on those? So how we see it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's nice that the assumption we made, just before the poll was correct. We also see that, our visitors are mainly, what we see are mainly also B2B software SaaS companies. And I think, if you have kind of a higher average revenue per account, it's also common to do mainly invoicing rather than withdrawing, 5K per month in a recurring way, just via direct debit. So it's nice to see. You also see some that have put a healthy mix, and what you then typically see is that you offer customers, maybe if you have, like, as an example, 3 price plans, like a basic, a premium, and enterprise price plan. An example that, the basic and premium editions can go via a credit card or direct debit. You have kind of a shorter way to sign up, which is also, good, because that means your customer acquisition cost on the smaller subscriptions is low. And on the enterprise ones, you have kind of the manual invoice, which is, very common in SaaS. So very cool to see these results. Thank you very much.
And what is the practice in Younium? So can you also share with our audience a bit with how we do it? As you mentioned, like majority of our audience is from the B2B SaaS, and we are also B2B SaaS. So maybe give.
Yeah, we're in the top row at Younium ourselves. So we do mainly invoicing ourselves as well. I am not aware of any agreements we make with our customers that have a kind of a credit card or direct debit type of thing. I think that's also because we're in the kind of higher average revenue per account range of customers. So I think that's the main reason. So we don't have like a €2 per user for 4 years per user subscription, as an example. So I think that's why we do what we do, and I think that's also what I see here in the results. So we're on the same page as our customers and visitors today.
Exactly. Okay, let's hear in the ingredients what you prepared for us for today.
Cool. Yes. Move on. So we're going to move on to which data is actually on an invoice. And it's not because we just want to be smart about what's on an invoice and boring, but this comes back in a relevant way. Let me say that. So first of all the amounts here do not reflect the Younium pricing model. This invoice comes from our demo environment. And then I want to highlight a few things which we see here and on the invoice. So we see the customer name and address details. We see a customer reference, which are maybe, numbers or purchase order numbers, and references from the suppliers, like our references, the invoice dates and numbers, any VAT if applicable, information about the product or service, and of course, the payment conditions and due dates of the invoice. Again, the reason we're showing all of this information, because it comes back from discussions held prior to actually sending this invoice, most of which come from maybe the quote or contract proposal. We will zoom into that a bit later. We agreed a different way of payment with your customers, like direct debit or credit card. You go a different route than the invoice. Please note that an invoice still may be sent, but it's kind of more of a confirmation of the already paid amount, like we are withdrawing X from your bank account by then and then, or we did it already. Typically what we see in recurring businesses, as I also said, is that when dealing with these payment methods, it's typically the customer chooses an off-the-shelf subscription, like maybe through a portal or through the in-app itself, or maybe a website. The customer enters their bank or credit card details, and usually after the payment is made, the subscription is activated and the customer has access to the tool. This is common if you have kind of an average revenue per account below around 50 to 100 euros per month. If you have higher ARPA and allow for negotiation in your contract, it's not really a common thing. It still exists, it's not common. Lots of SaaS companies do have a healthy mix as well when they allow self-service subscriptions on the lower price plan and custom subscriptions on the enterprise price plan. So very nice to see that poll comes back in this information as well. We're moving on to our first ingredient, which is reusing the information. So after stating the obvious for a few minutes just now, we now dive into the good part of the webinar, if you ask me, but all the information from before comes back in a relevant way. So there's a few key things we advise our customers when it comes to billing. The first key ingredient is reusing. By this we mean reusing the information you have collected so far. A lot of the information which is on an invoice or on a direct debit statement or credit card agreement has been received previously in the process. So you should aim to have all information needed on the invoice before you actually have to send it. So if we look at kind of a lead to invoice or prospect to invoice process, it looks like this. The customer name and address should be there when you either start prospecting them, or they come maybe in through your inbound marketing funnel. Then you have meetings where you find out which products from your offering they're looking for and which will end up on the quote. Then the quote has some additional info like references, VAT, payment conditions, which of course also end up on the agreement, which in many cases is a signed quote. The invoice date and number are actually the only ones coming from the invoice itself on the day it's created. So if you reuse all information gathered in the process, you have all you need. Directly jumping into the second ingredient, which is integration. So digging up all the information we can reuse can still be cumbersome if you don't have this second ingredient. So if we want to have all this information reused, but in an automated way, our second keyword comes into play, which is integration. In essence, you have noted the customer name coming either from inbound or outbound in maybe a CRM system. You also log what kind of products they need or like, and some CRMs also offer quotation functionality. The information in a quote and agreement is typically either generated from or completed in a subscription management solution tool. The subscription management role here is crucial to success, as this gathers all that information from the CRM and the quote, and based on billing rules of the agreement and product structure generates that invoice. With integration, the invoice data can be sent to the finance system so that the system knows who to invoice for which product and what amount, including all payment conditions, etc. Let's crank it up one more notch, as some info like VAT and payment conditions are in a general matter also sometimes stored in the financial system. So we also need to ensure that this information is stored and integrated into our subscription management solution. So it shows up on the quote, it shows up on the subscription, and ultimately also, again, the invoice. So you see the arrow on the bottom right there moving back. Also, the finance system generates the invoice number and the invoice date of sending, and we may also like that back into our subscription management system. And to go beyond that, we also tell the CRM system what has been invoiced, what's the payment status, or even more advanced, like how does the complete subscription look like for this customer. Sales and account managers therefore also have a relevant insight back in the tools they're using, rather than going to the finance department to ask for the unpaid invoice to call your customer, when it's not paid and you need to take action. So a bi-directional integration in your quote to cash process is therefore crucial for billing automation and billing insights at the relevant places in the processes and tools. Whew, mouthful. I'm really keen to hear if you also, use some sort of system integration, and to find it out, Mr. Voye, can you open up our second poll?
Yes, of course. And this was really interesting to see how the subscription management can connect all of the systems together. Really, really interesting second ingredient. Okay, let me ask the poll a question. Do you use system integration to enable reusing of info? So we have, yes, my CRM integrates with the finance system. Yes, I use a subscription hub with full integration. Smaller parts of the quote to cash process are integrated. And then we have also no. So let us give also a few more questions, seconds, sorry. I can give a few more questions later. And also feel free to engage in a chat box. If you have any question, you can drop it over now. We will, and Wolter will answer it on the end of the webinar, but feel free to write it down now. Okay, let us share the results. So majority of attendees say no, so they don't use the integration to enable the reusing of the info. We have several also having smaller parts of the quote to cash process that are integrated. And also we have using of the subscription hub, what I'm quite happy to see. Can you give us a bit of a comment on this?
Yeah, absolutely. So, on the previous poll, I kind of had an assumption on what the results would be of the poll. On this one, I really didn't. So I'm really excited to see these results. That's the first. I think, no is quite big here. And I think, all of the prospects we speak to, I think that's also kind of, the way it happens now, because, in general, I think, a lot of our visitors today as well have a CRM system where they register the leads, they register the deal process and deal flows, etc. And then there comes kind of a part where it's not, where the integration stops. So you kind of, have that data, you have a quotation, and you have a signed agreement with your customer, and then you kind of have no place to really put all of that directly. Other than the one some have, answered here, like, yes, my CRM integrates with the finance system. So there's, for some, straightforward subscriptions, there's a way to kind of, sync that data from the CRM to the finance system. And then from there, you can start the billing. Really excited to also see that there's a few subscription hub users. So first of all, I like it when the methodology is known. And second of all, I think it's just good that, we see with, that these are things we need as SaaS and software companies. It's a good way to do this, and smaller parts of the quote to cash are integrated. We speak to a lot of prospects who kind of already have some form of automation going on with their own product and linked to some sort of subscription management or billing part. I'm just really it's really cool to see the results, and I hope for those who have answered no, that after this webinar you also have a lot of inspiration on how you can actually do this.
Okay, let's see the third ingredient. I think this one will be the secret one.
The secret, yes.
The secret
chef special. The last key ingredient is subscription-based billing, because we didn't even scratch the surface of recurring billing. As so far in this webinar, what we have been able to invoice was a simple product line, and we have kind of the framework and minimum requirements of the actual invoicing order, right? Like the address detail and stuff like that. Subscription billing enables you to automate the billing process of even the most complicated enterprise subscriptions. Like a B2B subscription typically covers many different product types and structures. There is the recurring component, like a monthly subscription for the users or for the service. You also sometimes have usage billing, which probably is one of the most challenging ones, where you upfront maybe don't know what the customer will use from your service, and you either have to agree a starting amount and correct that amount throughout the subscription, or you just provide access to the subscription and invoice their usage in arrears, right? Commonly in SaaS, there's also one-off billing, like maybe a setup fee or some consultancy hours. We also need to comply to certain tax regulations. So for instance, tax in the USA can differ per zip code per minute or something. So not sure about you, but I don't want to Google what the right tax amount is every time I'm sending out an invoice. And another common use case is a mix of products with different billing periods. So for instance, on one invoice, you need a setup fee, which is billed once, the usage, which is billed monthly in arrears. And then you have the product subscription itself, which is billed annually in advance. And then the add-on is billed monthly. But it also happens that a customer requests an add-on in the middle of a month. So we also need something that calculates the prorated amount. So we don't miss out on invoicing revenue just because we can support it, right? And then last but not least, pick a billing engine that supports complex pricing models, such as tiered or volume-based pricing, which is crucial, especially when you deal with usage-based billing as well. When billing, you start with the general terms of a subscription, right? So for each term, you must be in full control of who is the customer and who is the billing customer. There can be a difference there, right? So, you have just signed McDonald's Zagreb, but you need to send the invoice to McDonald's Group as an example. What are the subscription terms? Is this an evergreen subscription, or do we need to track the end date? What are the notice period terms? When can the customer cancel? And when does the subscription automatically renew, or do we need to take action? All of this data is crucial to track and is needed for the information, for the automation, and comes back ultimately on the invoice again. The subscription management part covers the complete registration of the contract, including all that integrated and reused information. The billing engine takes that and invoices accordingly. In the subscription management part, you also have your product data registered. So if you look on a product level information, there is some information that is crucial to be on top of to enable billing automation. So you probably at the moment, you sell your services and products with like different pricing models, such as recurring fees, one-time fees, or variable usage fees. For any recurring fees, you may also provide flexibility in how you price it. Is it monthly, quarterly, or annual price? The pricing period is, however, not the billing period. It just says what the product costs per month. The billing frequency is what determines the billing on which the billing, determines the frequency on which the billing actually takes place. A typical example is that you sell something for 1,000 euros per month, but you bill it annually in advance. Something that we're not focusing on this webinar, but is kind of crucial for this whole process as well, is the revenue recognition. This is also something you automatically streamline when you implement automated billing in a subscription management tool. So good to know. Another area to automate are the variable fees, which are subscription agreements based on consumption. Usage-based billing is becoming more common, and it may be crucial for some companies to get pricing right and not leave money on the table. We frequently meet companies that say, as soon as we have a subscription management system in place, we will start charging for variable fees, which is done in a totally different manner than what they could do before manually, right? This can also make you meet your budget for next year's growth ambition in some cases.
And let me just interrupt you here for a second, Wolter. So we would, and Monica shared it already in the chat box, just for our audience. You click the link, what is in the chat box. We have a really cool blog about what was written by our Eric Mullen on the topic of the usage-based metrics. So you can read upon this. It's kind of interesting. We gave some examples there, or he gave some examples. Very interesting blog on the SaaS metrics and what and how to calculate that one. It's a bit tricky one, and you can see also how to approach usage MRR. Really interesting blog. So click on the chat and bookmark it, and back to the Wolter's ingredients for the streamlining of the billing in B2B SaaS.
Yeah, thanks, Roy. I think it's indeed very good. So, you know, a lot of these companies, our visitors probably today as well, is like, oh, we're finally into the recurring business. We know how to do our reporting with the MRR and stuff like that. And then we go back to usage, like all these variables. How do we manage and combine that? So this blog will give you some nice insights on that. So the truth is you know, to summarize this story, is that if you have don't have an automated process in place, it takes either a lot of effort or it's nearly impossible to manage usage billing manually. Because with every billing run, there will be a step for collecting the usage data, allocating this data to each account, price, and usage. This is, you know, for those who do this now, is a very time-consuming and error-prone process, which most likely is also done by that, you know, one employee who knows how to do it. Plus, if you get it wrong, you can leave money on the table or even get angry customers for billing a wrong amount. You get these discussions you really don't want to have, right? To summarize all the needed ingredients and use cases for these ingredients, we made you a drawing. So in the middle here, we have a centralized subscription hub that is also the central point of the integration. Here we take the CRM data and start our reusing with an integration. We also can integrate our own SaaS service and, you know, fuel the subscription hub with actual usage, which will be then taken aboard the billing. Any contracts that are up for renewal, either active or automatic renewals, will be shown in a customer success platform to also ensure your customers are happy, and another invoice can go out for a next term. A more advanced subscription hub can also take care of the billing itself and does not depend on the finance system chosen by the customer. So Younium, for instance, integrates with TaxJar or Avalara to provide real-time tax situations needed for the billing, which means you don't have to Google that actual amount we talked about. And for those that have chosen a credit card or direct debit payment, Younium also integrates with systems like Go Cardless or Stripe to allow for these type of payment options for the, you know, smaller price tiers, if you can call it that. If the invoice is chosen, Younium sends the information either directly via email and PDF, via Younium, or integrates with services like Apex and Visma e-invoicing for the more exotic flavors of e-invoicing and external prints. If you want to keep using your finance system for billing, then Younium sends the invoice master data to the finance system, so the finance system is instructed as to what to invoice for which customer and which amount. So that's also a way to really automate that part. By all of this, an integrated subscription hub centralizing all information on the subscription kind of enables a two-step user guide for billing as we see it. You select the target date, which checks all usage in previous periods. It checks all setup fees, and it checks all recurring fees for the targeted period, and it generates the selected batch and sends it out. This means that after a few seconds you spent on billing, you can kind of go back to sleep, right? So that's a nice way of doing billing, I would say. I really hope all this information so far gave you some strong information and insights as to why billing can be made very easy if you use a centralized subscription hub to store all agreements and relevant parameters for billing. To summarize the webinar, we need to use structured subscription data, which is fueled by all other relevant systems in the quote to cash process. The subscription hub is therefore acting as the single source of truth and is the essential trigger for your billing engine. Make sure the subscription hub you select can also handle all pricing models you believe are relevant for your customers. Flexibility in pricing is one thing that can really set you apart from competition. With the centralized subscription hub, all input needed to perform your billing can be automated and reduce the risks of errors and revenue leakage. Also not very unimportant. And something we didn't cover during this webinar, but it's very important, is the communication about billing. Make sure you avoid unnecessary questions and make sure the customer knows what they sign up for and what they're ultimately billed for, right? So the three key ingredients are part of a subscription hub. Let's talk about how a subscription hub has also helped one of our customers for a bit. So time for the customer story. This time we're speaking about our customer called Voyado. Voyado is a customer experience platform for the retail and e-commerce industry. Voyado says that after implementing Younium, the Younium process, the invoicing takes them 1 day instead of several weeks. It's really a massive gap for them. Voyado is a fast growing company and they needed to be able to scale on an international level. And having a tool that supports them also for the international scaling around the currencies and all things tax that come with that, it worked really well for Voyado. On our website, we also have a video of Voyado where they themselves explain this, amongst many other customer reference videos. So please, make sure you check that out. In addition to this, we have many customers. Feel free to reach out to us if you at some point want to speak with one of our customers instead of hearing a sales pitch from me, but you want to actually hear some actual stories of practical use cases. Our customers and us are always ready to support you on your journey by sharing our knowledge. I hope this was a useful story, short and sweet, but again, you know where to find us if more detail is needed. On that topic, I would like to conclude the content portion of today's webinar and gladly hand back to my colleague, Hervoye.
Thank you so much, Wolter. Yeah, we can say that we are at the part of the webinar what we can call dessert, maybe Q&A. But before we deep dive into the Q&A, I would just like to say thanks. I'm always impressed when I see the importance and what can the subscription hub do when you do all of the integrations, how you can reduce your errors, automate your processes, reduce the manual work as well. Each time when we see this picture of the connecting all of the systems in one, it's very impressive. So yeah, thank you so much. Okay, before the Q&A part, let us also, and we see some questions there, and this will be maybe a tip for you, Wolter. Start to prepare, check on those while we are in the let's say light introduction about Younium. So we are founded in 2017. Currently, we have offices in Malmö, Amsterdam, and Stockholm. and our solution is tailored for advanced B2B SaaS scenarios or subscription businesses. So this is where we believe that we bring the most value, and yes, this is our niche, and something, as Wolter also mentioned, where we know that we can help out, and yeah, as a SaaS solution, it's kind of interesting also for us on that side. Some of our customers, Wolter mentioned, you have also in the chat box some of the success stories. You can see how Younium helped them to automate, to reduce the billing time. So feel free to click in the chat box on those as well. We will also share you the knowledge page. So check out, maybe you will find some interesting topics there for you. Maybe you will find something that can help you in your day-to-day work. We will be really happy if that be the case. Also, our LinkedIn profile is in the chat box, so feel free to connect with Monica, with Wolter, or with me, or with anyone in Younium. That will be really nice that we stay connected also after the webinar. Okay, Q&A part, Wolter. Maybe to start with the comment what we got in the chat box in the beginning of the webinar, and that's the danger of integration is that CRM customer may not be same as a billing entity in the finance system. Could you give us a comment on this one?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we talked about also the Younium being this subscription hub, which means the source of truth is there. And that also means that, we tell the finance system what an account is about. So for instance, how one of our, you use HubSpot as an example there. It's a CRM connector we have. The CRMs are kind of, how I can say it, I'm sales myself, but sales are cowboys. We tend to forget half the information we need to fill in. So, we sometimes rush through the process because we just, look forward to a signature. So what our connector works is, when sales create a quote via HubSpot into our system, and then there's a subscription generated from that with, which then from that point on becomes the single source of truth in terms of what is the customer data address, what is the billing address, what are the agreements, payment terms, and stuff like that. It's not that they can just make that and do it. It's that there's an authorization step there for finance where they have a check before they activate it. So finance kind of receives the workflow there and see like, okay, I want to have a look at this product. I want to have a look at the contract that is made by, Steve from sales. I want to have a look at, what they agreed on the payment terms, and they can edit it before activating it as a valid subscription. So, you have a sanity check to make sure that the information is correct before you activate it, and then it becomes, your master data. So I think that's how we try to solve that, because I completely get that point if you don't do that.
Yeah. Okay, we have also, if you could give us any suggestions on activating subscriptions automatically after a field service action. So
okay, yeah.
Maybe if you can give also to audience and to a listener some suggestions.
Yeah, very good point. That's a very common thing also in SaaS, not only for field services. It's, something that triggers a subscription. So, what we also see in SaaS a lot is that, as an example, you sign with a subscription company today, but it takes you 3 months to do the onboarding, and you kind of got a rough estimate of like it's roughly 3 months, but it's not confirmed when. And you say to your supplier like, yeah, but I'm not going to pay until I'm live, which is kind of the same example as your field service, right? So there needs to be an action taken prior to starting the charge of the subscription. We deal with that with what we call milestones. So a milestone can be, in field service, like the forklift needs to be there on site before, we start charging you for it. And then when you both agree with the customer, the forklift has arrived, we press the button, milestone met, and then also Younium automatically starts invoicing from that period, prorated onwards. It's the same with the go live as in terms of a setup with your product. If you take a few months to onboard, as soon as you're live, you can press that button, or you maybe also can be flexible and just giving like 3 months free of charge, when you don't know exactly. But milestones are the way we cover that.
Interesting. There is also one question that came in. You spoke about target data for invoicing. What is target data?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a new yeah, it's not new. It's common for subscription management solutions to work with these things because previously we dealt with invoice data, which basically means we need to invoice the customer at some point. But a target date does a bit more. It checks around itself. Like, so if I set as an example a target date to the 1st of February to do my billing, what I'm instructing my billing engine to do is like check in February what are the subscriptions, you know, that need to be invoiced upfront, like the subscription fee that starts for another year. We need to invoice that. But also, was there any usage in January that we need to invoice? So maybe we have agreed with the customer that they could eat 10 bananas of our warehouse. What we have also agreed, we check how many bananas they actually ate. And if it was 12, we also need to make sure we invoice those extra 2, right? That, you know, we're not part of their subscription. So that target date looks forward, like what is there to invoice, and also looks back. That's why it's so important.
And subscription management solution can also provide this data inside.
Yeah, because you have your usage, you know, the actual bananas the customer has eaten, you know, comes in via the API. It is linked to the subscription, and you know, the subscription also covers like this is the users they have as an example. So.
Good one. A bit challenging for me. I was like, okay. Looking at this.
I'm also not sure if many SaaS companies in this webinar can relate to bananas as a service, but you know,
exactly,
it works. Yeah.
Again, really happy to see one of the questions is using the terminology. So, have you seen examples of the subscription hub orchestrating revenue recognition, which may be different from the billing periods?
Yeah. Absolutely. So it's very common that you bill your customers annually in advance, but you recognize monthly revenue monthly over time. It's very common to, you know, not spend all the money you get, which you invoice in the front, to already spend that because you kind of, you know, have agreed a certain period with your customer to do that. So at Younium, we have advanced revenue recognition schemes. You can do like a front load, back load, monthly over time, upfront recognition, all of kind of the revenue recognition flavors that there are. You can do that. And what is cool with that is you can also use Younium as, you know, the source of truth for revenue recognition. So you can also kind of overwrite the revenue recognition in the finance system, because there's a lot of finance systems which do it, as an example, a bit, which kind of take a prorated calculation. So as an example, you have annually in advance invoicing, but then they split it out monthly over time, but do it by the days that there are in a month. Which means, you know, in January, you get like the full year revenue divided by 365. And in January, you get that amount times 31 days that are in that month. So you always have revenue fluctuations, even though you're not doing anything. So you have more revenue in January than you have in February. So that's why we provide a bit more flexibility to make sure that our customers have a stable MRR or AR flow.
We are a bit out of time, but we have one more question, and I hope that's okay that we have this one. It's the last one. So our default pricing is annual, but some customers negotiate different billing arrangements. Is that supported in Younium and in our platform? Yeah,
absolutely. So, you know, you can, the way you structure your products is you say like this product is billed annually in advance. And then if you allow sales on the quotation they make or on the subscription you create, you can, for a product or a service or the full contract, can say like, no, for this customer, we have negotiated monthly billing agreements or quarterly agreements. And also, again, that billing engine that does the invoicing will look at that and sends out the invoice automatically based on those agreements. So yes.
One more question landed in the chat box. So let's take that one. Will you offer a financing solution within the platform at one point?
Yeah, a financing, that's always a difficult one. So I'm not sure what is meant by financing, to be completely honest. So we run accounts receivable, that's finance in the solution, but we have a lot of metrics and KPIs that can get you financing from funding. So yeah, I'm not sure if I answered the question correctly, but please, you know, reach out to me on LinkedIn, write me a personal message. I'll get back to you the same second to make sure that I answer your question correctly.
One more popped in the Q&A part as well. So most customer success stories are from the pure software companies. Do you also have examples of combination hardware sales, recurring software, including field services management, and how is that linked with Younium?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not sure if the customer stories are indeed covering that, but we have customers, absolutely customers that have a healthy mix of hardware itself. So for instance, you can also have, alarm systems as a subscription where you also send the alarm tool, but then also manage the subscription of the alarm. So yes, we have customers that have a mix of that. So again, let us know, and then we'll show you what the tool can do in terms of hardware and in terms of subscription. And if you want to, brainstorm at some point with one of our customers that also does that, it's of course an option.
This is a very valid point from the audience, and thank you for this question. We don't have at our page on the customer success stories, we have pure softwares, but it will be kind of cool also to include customers who combine hardware sales with the recurring software.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you for the feedback. Good point. Really, really good one. Okay, we concluded today's webinar. Thank you, Wolter, for giving me also a bit of a bit of an intro on something what will happen here at Younium. So you mentioned tax jar. You mentioned I will not Google all of those taxes when we are expanding to USA to see all of the taxes what USA has. So for all of you listening in, a light heads up and sneak peek. We are preparing a tax jar topic and a special topic on USA tax. So if you're looking and considering into expanding in US market, keep an eye on our Knowledge Hub. We will share a blog soon there on this topic and also maybe prepare a webinar on it. But yeah, keep an eye and stay on the lookout on our LinkedIn page and also on our website. With this, we concluded one more webinar, the first webinar of the year. Hope to see you again soon, and you will receive the recording of the webinar in your inboxes in 1 week time. Feel free to reach out to Wolter with any other questions if you have. And thank you so much for joining us, and have a nice rest of the day and of course, nice week.
Yeah. Thank